All right, guys, this week in the shop, we're going to talk about some common things we look into every time we get customers in, some certain things to look for in your car, why to DIY, when to DIY, some common issues, what not to touch when we're working on your car, stuff like that. I got Kris with me here today. So, one of the first things we kind of look into when we're working on cars is just, what's wrong with it, what we got to change, stuff like that. What's the first thing we usually look into doing when we work on a car, Kris?
Typically, we usually set the customer down and kind of figure out like what the end goal is with the car, what they want to do with it, if they want to drive it a bunch, if they're looking to race it, to air conditioning, all that different stuff kind of goes in with it.
Yeah, and one of the big questions people usually have is which parts do we do first? So when do we go full blown, going spending $100,000, or when do we usually spend close to five, or how can people save money in that aspect?
Yeah, because there's a lot of things that kind of integrate with one another as far as being able to save labor by doing like an AC kit while you're doing the engine is out of it. Different things like that. Like I say, a lot of it too depends on what they want to do with the car. You know, you get people that just strictly want to show it, and them are the ones that are going to spend a lot of money to paint and do all that stuff. Where anymore, it's getting to be more and more popular where the people just want to drive them and enjoy them. So then we try to find, if they don't have a car, then it's kind of nice to find one that's close to what they're looking for, and then just change the things from there as far as being the most cost-effective route.
One of the biggest things I come across when we're doing just kind of motor swapping haulies, stuff like that, is wiring. What other issues do we usually come across when we're working on some of these cars that people find?
Wiring is definitely the most common. Seems like they've been added to 50 times, you know. Other than that, it's just a lot of updating, you know, suspension wise and I guess stuff that you have to go backwards on. Like, yeah, I mean, wiring would be hands down the most common. Otherwise, the rest of it's just, you know, a lot of parts. So
What's the most time consuming part of even just normally a restoration, not just a drag car? Because obviously getting cages and stuff in is time consuming, but just.
like on a full build, you pretty much got to build the whole car to fit everything properly, then take the whole thing back apart so that it can go to paint.
Yeah.
So, you know, that process is long because it's, you basically build the car twice. You know, you don't do the wiring and stuff before it goes to paint, but it's 80% of the way there. But that last 20% also takes the same amount of time.
Yeah.
So there is no like particularly long part.
And one of the big things that goes into that too is just like ordering parts. You get so far, and then all of a sudden we got to find a part, stuff like that. But
we try to kind of set that up so like before a car even comes in the shop, we order all the parts that we know we're gonna need. That way, you know, typically you can get it in here and get rolling and steam through it as quickly as possible. But you always run into things, or you know, it's inevitable. Like anything, like building a house, people want to add or change this or that. So it does, but it's it can be a process no matter what you do.
Yeah, and one of the big things anymore is LS swapping. Is that really as cost effective as people think, or when you go from a small block to an LS and a resto, or just keep the small block and add fuel injection, stuff like that?
I just tell people if you have nothing to start with, it's about a wash. But if you already have a good running small block car, that's maybe we got one in the shop now. It's a pretty fresh build. You know that doesn't make sense cost wise because you know it's already set up for the small block and 90% of the stuff as far as exhaust and all the different parts are already there. So then it made sense to keep the small block in it and just update it. Honestly, by the time he's done, he's probably gonna have the same money as if he were to put an LS in it. But there's also a lot of people that still like the look of the traditional small block or the traditional, you know, original engine. So there's definitely a place for him.
Yeah, and anymore you can buy parts that look like small blocks for LSs too, which
sure, yeah.
something we can talk about some other time. But
and that LS deal, I mean, you can be budget in real junkyard. It just there again depends what you want it to look like when you're done. We don't get into that side of it. The stuff we like to do is more
stuff that's actually nice
when it's done.
Yep,
so
for sure. And we mainly use Holly stuff like that, but why do we use Holly and not Tech or some of these other budget brands, stuff like that?
Mainly because we're familiar with it and parts availability. You know, you can go anywhere in the country, and Holly's everywhere. So that part is really nice. There are some like the Tech we're going to try on one. There's some differences that make it nice for some cars. Other cars, you know, the Holly's still, in my opinion, kind of the way to go. But the main thing being is familiarity. You know, finding a tuner that what do they like, because they all really have the same options.
Yep.
But it really comes down to the guy tuning it.
Yeah. One of the things I really like about Holly, we talk about it sometimes with the LS deal and just parts accessibility.
Yeah.
Like you say, if you're going on a drag and drive and you got some like a Coyote, your chances of getting parts are a lot more slim than if you have an LS.
You're not going to walk through the lot and find a...
Yeah, and you're not going to be able to find a parts store that's selling super specific items for a Ford small block as opposed to something else. So I think that's one of the big things we get.
And stuff too, you know, Holly uses a lot of like GM sensors. So you can go into O'Reilly's and pick up something if you really need to.
Yep. Yeah, and one big question I have is what do you not want to DIY and just leave to the customer or leave to the professionals instead of just doing it yourself?
Wiring would be a big one.
Wiring is a big one for me.
There's a lot of things that just it can really screw things up, and then it gives the companies a bad name. It gives Holly a bad name. Well, it was installed improperly.
Yeah.
There's little things that make a big difference in how the whole package comes together.
Yeah, just reading the instructions thoroughly is a big thing, I think. But
not trying to do any shortcuts is the biggest one. So.
Yeah. What makes a good customer? In my eyes, I think it's just the ability to understand how much it's actually going to cost and how much time it is. But I know there's differences in customers and stuff like that.
Being flexible, you know, open-minded. You know, some of these guys really get an idea of what they think they want, but in the end game, it's not either functional or, you know, it's in my idea to like, you should be able to look at this car 20 years from now and it should still be cool.
Yep.
So like that's where the flexibility comes into it, because we do like to have stuff come out of here that, you know, someone's going to look at a long time down the road and be like, that's a pretty sweet looking car, and not be like, whoa, what was that? You know?
Yeah. Yeah, and I know
it'd be cool back then, but
not
now.
We've had a couple cars come in that's like rods.
Yeah.
Where it's just cool even now, and he built it in the 90s, and I think that's a big thing we try to do. But when we are looking for customers, usually they come and find us first.
Exactly.
But I think part of that's just not being shitty, I guess. I don't know, like taking pride in your work is what actually gets customers and people that want to come back and actually tell people about stuff. So I think
word of mouth is definitely the best kind of advertisement to me. And I mean, we've done that from day one, really. And I don't know. And the people that come in when that understand what it's going to cost, and you're straight up with them, like, hey, this is going to be X amount of dollars, and then you can tell pretty quick whether or not it's going to happen or not. So, they're either on board or they're not calling back. So
Well, thanks for being in the vlog today, Kris.
No problem.
See you later.